In the meantime, we have a special legislative session ongoing, and we are happy to welcome to the program to discuss it the Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton. He joins us on the Murphy Show hotline to talk about the goings-on. Cameron, good afternoon. Glad you're here. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was in the gallery, in the media section of the gallery yesterday afternoon, just after you gavelled into session. During that time, I noted that you were discussing rules and the rules package as passed by the Rules Committee and as presented to the entire body. A lot of Democrats seem to have disfavor with some of the rules changes. But here's the thing, Cameron. I thought they wanted something more than just censure or expulsion with regard to those that were breaking the rules. It seemed to me that the Republicans were giving the Democrats some of what they asked for with regard to more flexibility for discipline measures that didn't involve expulsion. Help me understand all of this.
Well, sometimes what they asked for yesterday and what you give them today, once you give it to them, they decide that it wasn't really what they wanted yesterday, right? And so that's the game that they play. They don't want to hold their own caucus members accountable. The way it works is you're supposed to stay on the topic of the bill. You can't impugn the reputation of the member or a body. It's normal things that most people would look at and say, yeah, you shouldn't be allowed to do those things. And so now we have consequences on that. It's a vote of the body too. And now all of a sudden what they have figured out, some of them on the other side, is that they're going to have to vote. So if someone on the other side of the aisle impugns the reputation of the body, which it has happened before on the floor, happened the other night by Representative Jones, that would be a vote. And they don't want to hold their members accountable. And so, now they're going to have to.
Well, what I witnessed in the body last night, and you were standing at the dais as speaker, obviously, I witnessed a lot of Democrats being given 5 minutes to speak and ask questions about the rules packages, and each one of them were given a free opportunity to express their displeasure in some of the rules, except for the aforementioned Mr. Jones. And the reason that he was cut off, I thought you were incredibly patient. The other Republicans, including Majority Leader Lamberth, were incredibly patient in answering some of these questions that some of the minority party had until such time as one of them chose to begin to impugn the name and reputation of one of the members, namely yourself, Cameron. Representative Jones accused you, if I heard him correctly, accused you of racism. And this is the type of nonsense that you're trying to prevent in a body like the General Assembly, correct?
That's correct. That's what he does. He uses white supremacy all the time, says the body's a bunch of white supremacists. That's how he wants to do. That's what he wants to do. That's not allowed. It wasn't allowed in the last session. The difference is we didn't have the rules in place to really impose any consequences. And so now we do. It's a vote of the body. And unfortunately, for 50 years to 100 years, our General Assembly never had to afford these rules because everybody, as Representative Shaw said on the floor, I have a responsibility to come up here and conduct myself in the way that I should conduct myself, which is with respect, decorum, and stay within the realms of the rules. But you have a couple people who don't believe in that anymore. And so therefore, we have to impose some rules because they don't follow them, and the body is the one that needs to hold them accountable. And so that's what the body's going to do if they go off and do the things that they have been doing in the last session and then this session.
So we have seen the rules package passed, correct?
Correct.
And now what are we doing today and tomorrow? Give us the lay of the land as to what you expect the schedule to be moving forward, Cameron.
Well, right now in the House, all of our subcommittees are starting to meet, and bills are moving out. Bills are not moving out. Tomorrow will be a full committee day. Whatever bills make it out of sub will be in full committees tomorrow. And then at some point on Thursday, I think right now we go back on the House floor on Thursday at noon, and we'll go. And it looks like someone unfortunately has a disturbance in our Civil Justice Subcommittee, and they're being escorted out by the troopers right now. So,
one of the things that you tried to do was maintain order last evening as I was in the gallery, and, it, for the life of me, is difficult to understand what people don't understand about the rules of the gallery. Right? The gallery is not there to participate in the process. They're there to observe the process. And I appreciate the fact that you maintained a measure of patience with individuals that chose to speak out in the gallery. At some point, you had to tell them, listen, this is your last warning. If I have to give you another warning, I'm clearing that portion of the gallery. I mean, that's part of the responsibility that you have to maintain decorum as Speaker of the House, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And what I usually try to do with the gallery is give them a warning or two and say, look, you can't do this. There may be some people up there who are new. They might not know. Sometimes, you can identify the one or two people who are causing the problems, but sometimes you can't. And so at that point, you have to clear the whole gallery. But that's what has happened in the past. We're not doing anything different than we've ever done before. Unfortunately, it's just happening more frequently than we had to use it in the past. But, we can't debate bills. We can't have questions, and you can't hear yourself if the people in the gallery are continuing to make noise and intervene and disrupt the proceedings.
Are you tracking, as Speaker of the House, are you solely focused on activities within the House? Are you tracking any activity that's going on in the Senate, especially with a compressed time frame like the special session?
Well, we always keep in contact with the Senate side and try to understand what they're doing. Sometimes we're on different roads, and they want to go down a certain way and we want to go down. That's why we have two bodies, and then we try to figure it out. So, we always keep an eye on them, but, the Senate is the Senate, and the Senate's going to do what the Senate wants to do. And so, we'll see what happens at the end.
Well, because it's my understanding that the Senate is only taking up 3 bills. How does that impact the activity in the House? The 3 bills that I'm understanding the Senate's taking up is the human trafficking bill. They're going to codify the governor's executive order on submissions of background check information for 72 hours, and they're going to do the safe storage campaign. But other than that, they're not taking anything up. Does that affect the House at all?
No, it doesn't affect us. We're going to continue pushing the legislation that we think that we need on mental health parity, emergency and voluntary commitment, a duty to warn, which is very important, which will save lives. We want to clarify that. We also want to work on the background check system that we have that's not instantaneous, even though that's what we thought we had. Juvenile crime in our state. Crime's the number 1 issue in Memphis, number 2 issue here in Davidson County. We need to fix it. Some of these issues, look, I get some people are like, we don't have to do it now. If you don't do some of this stuff now, you're waiting a whole year and until you can pass it. January is when you come back, but realistically, it wouldn't be until March or April at the earliest by the time you get funding. So you lose a year and a half on juvenile crime of holding juveniles accountable for carjackings, for murders, for other things, and you're just allowing that to continue to happen on top of the other things. As also providing funding for K through 12, we need to increase the funding for hardening of schools. The cost is a little bit higher than we initially thought. We also need to do stuff for higher education. I guess the House just has a different philosophy of the things that we think are needed right now than the Senate. I think the things the Senate want to do, we'll see. But I think there's things that we have to do right now that would save lives, that would help people get the help that they need with the mental health resources and access, and also make sure that our mental health hospitals and beds can continue to serve those needs, because their reimbursement rates are so low, they're losing tens of millions of dollars a year.
So help me understand, does anything change in terms of how this works in the special session because of the compressed time frame? In other words, the House takes up what they take up, the Senate takes up what they take up, and then once the House votes, it goes over to the Senate, and I guess it's up to the Senate what they decide they're going to take on and perhaps what they don't?
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but, it takes both bodies to say we're going to adjourn. So, one body can't force the other one to adjourn. So we'll see. I mean, we could be here a little bit longer than we think. We could be here next week. We'll see what happens towards the end of the week and where we want to go.
Cameron, one of the bills, and I don't know how familiar you are with it, because there's a lot of bills that have been filed in the special session, way more than I think will ultimately get considered on the floor or even in committee. One of the bills was DNA testing or DNA samples being collected at a time of felonious arrest. as opposed to felonious conviction. Do you know anything about that bill? And if you do, what can you say on it?
Yeah, well, we've had conversations about that bill. First of all, you're right. I think there's 102 bills that were filed by Friday. Only 90 had Senate companion sponsors, so only 90 can be heard. Of those, if you get to the floor and you have 15, that's probably a number that could get to the floor. So you're not really talking massive amount of bills that we're going to be debated on the House floor, first of all. So to your point, you're accurate. On that bill, right now in state, law enforcement has the capability on violent felonies to go ahead and collect DNA samples at the time of arrest. They've been doing that now for a long, long time. What they have asked for, what law enforcement has asked the governor for, it's an administration bill, is the ability to do it on all felonies. And so it's not something new in the aspect of collecting DNA on criminals. It's expanding which felonies they can collect it on more than violent, which is what they've been collecting over the last.
I would expect that the violent felony bill got passed based on the fact that these were violent felonies and these are the worst of the worst accused offenders. How do you jive due process with the idea of collecting DNA from someone that is yet to be convicted by a jury of their peers?
Well, I mean, you have the capability, on a DUI arrest, if you're not guilty quite yet, you're right, you're charged, and they can take a blood sample, which is technically could be DNA.
Mm-hmm.
The law enforcement will argue that they take your fingerprints before you're accused, which is an identifying marker. When you talk to law enforcement, what they say is that there's a lot of unsolved cases out there. And this would help if you had the Eliza Fletcher case to maybe instead of having to wait on a rape kit for a long time, you have been able to identify other stuff that maybe that perpetrator did and solve a lot of crimes. And so law enforcement is looking at it a little different. There is a due process question. I mean, there is a liberty question. All that will be debated in committee. I don't know where it's going to come out of committee. But it's one of those things that it's a conversation that needs to be had, and then we'll see what the committee wants to do with it.
Well, specific to that and more broadly to some of the other more complex bills, does it concern you at all that some of these more complex issues, and I think it's fair to characterize a DNA and due process issue as a little bit more complex, does it concern you at all that you're compressing the time frame by which you can debate these things, and maybe some of these ought to be set to the back burner, not to be left behind, but perhaps to be debated when you have a little more time to do it in a general session?
Well, I mean, that's a conversation for the committee, and that's what they'll decide. I don't think they're not going to have debate on it and raise questions or objections or support for it simply because, and then it still takes the votes to get out. So, we'll have to see. There's a lot of complex issues, and so, if there's things that the committee can decide on and then the body can pass, to get it out of the House, it would have to go through a subcommittee, a full committee, potentially another full committee, and then finally get to the House floor. A lot of times by the time things get there, things don't get there because of various committees. And so we'll see. But I think the debate needs to happen. That bill needs to get in the committee so people can raise and talk about it. So even if it doesn't pass this year, when you come back in January, you've already had the debate and you can look over the next 4 months. But I think debate is important on these bills, whether you pass them now or if you wait till January.
Cameron Sexton, our guest, Speaker of the House. Cameron, I know you better than some and not as well as others. But as I'm sitting in the gallery yesterday, it occurred to me in watching the presence of our fine Tennessee state troopers in the rotunda, in the body itself, outside of the body, it occurred to me that things got a little out of hand at the end of the regular session earlier this year. And it feels like, and it felt yesterday like you were determined that you were going to see decorum in the House of Representatives in the special session yesterday. Was that a focus of yours both within the chamber and within the state capitol complex more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. It was. We've heard from a lot of members. Some people are going to say that things didn't get out of hand in April. You can go back and watch videos. Not everybody, but there was a strong presence of things getting out of hand and escalating very quickly. We're not going to have that again. We're not going to have the people disrupting the House proceedings on the House floor. There's consequences. We added to those, and then we're also going to make sure that the balcony stays intact. But our goal is to make sure that we can do the people's business in there. People can watch it live stream. They can come in person. They can stand outside. Nothing's changed. But in order to debate, you have to have decorum. You have to have rules. That's what we're going to instill. But we're also going to make sure that if visitors are here, that members are here, staff is here, other people are here, that they feel safe and secure when they're here and don't feel threatened or feel like they can't come down here because it's too violent. And that's not right either.
I should not be surprised at some of the things that your colleagues on the other side of the aisle say. But I have to tell you, I was shocked that they complained repeatedly about the amount of state troopers at the Capitol, considering that you have no idea what to expect in terms of protest and whatnot, especially considering the last portion of the regular session. Did that surprise you at all, Cameron, or are you accustomed to that type of language?
No, that's not surprising. You have to remember that they didn't vote for SROs in our K through 12 schools.
Right.
So
right.
If you're not going to support that, I mean, why would you think that they're going to support troopers?
Finally, Cameron, I want you to speak to this. I need to bring it up because I need to hear it from you. But all of the rumors about how you and the governor and Jack and Randy McNally and others over in the Senate, the fix is in, and you're going to sneak some red flag laws in there right at the end of all of this. I think it's a ridiculous suggestion. I've expressed the same on my radio show, but I want you to speak to this rumor that red flag laws are coming up for a vote in this special session. What do you say?
That's just silly nonsense. We've been very clear that's not going to happen. I mean, the best thing is watch what we do on the House side, and you'll see nothing like that's going to pass. What you have is you just have some people who want to continue to divide and try to conquer and raise money and put out issues that aren't accurate. And so just remember those groups who made that, and then just remember that what we said all along, we weren't going to do it. And I would assume that these groups will come back later and say, see, I told you because we did this and we said this, they didn't do it, when all along we weren't going to do anything. It's a game for some of these groups. That's unfortunate. They're not here for the best interests of Tennesseans or even to report what is fact, because you can go talk to any member, Matt, and they will tell you very bluntly that we're not passing red flag laws from the Republican side. Can't speak for the Democrats. So it's just silly nonsense that these groups put out. You know, I hate it, but that's what they do, and we just have to work through it.
Cameron, thank you for your time today. I know it's a very, very busy week. We're monitoring, we're watching the situation, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
All right. Thank you.